Welcome to the What Happens Next YouTube channel. What we're aiming to do with this channel is share content designed to make sure that you're supported through whatever's next in your life. And we'd love to continue to do that. I've got a favour to ask today, and what I'd ask you to do is just subscribe. It costs you nothing, but it really helps us deliver really good quality content on a consistent basis. Thank you, and let's go on to the interview. Hi, and welcome to this What Happens Next interview. As you know, if you've seen a few of these interviews before, What Happens Next is all about empowering you to make decisions in your life designed to work out what's next. And we're covering off a range of topics on the What Happens Next YouTube channel and throughout these interviews, talking about maintaining purpose and vision, thinking about your physical well-being, thinking about what financial independence means to you, but also making sure that you're doing all of the things we know contributes to happiness and well-being in later life. The What Happens Next project came from a insight that I had from working with a client who we knew was never going to run out of money again, but didn't seem as happy as they could be. And they started talking to me about the fact that they had purpose, meaning, and values in their business when they were employed in a quite a significantly higher corporate role that they'd lost. And what we wanted to do is have really interesting conversations with people with insight to support you to make whatever that transition looks like in your life. That may look like retirement. That may look like carrying on some work, but in a different level of intensity. Whatever it looks like for you, we're here to support you with having interesting conversations and being curious so that you've got as many insights as possible to support you. Now, a lot of the clients we look after at Savello are business owners, and often a lot of the conversations we have are about business value and including that business value as part of their financial plan. So the conversation that I'm having with Mike today is about business value, working out how that fits into your plan, and looking at the factors that you need to consider when thinking about that. Mike, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Chris.
Good. And you've told me you've got a snazzy new camera, so it's looking really, really good.
It looks quite bright, doesn't it? I could have a light on it as well, but that gets too bright then, so I'll keep the light off.
You need to turn it down, otherwise you get a suntan, right?
Clean the back the desk.
Yeah, make sure everything's tidy. So for the benefit of our audience, tell us a bit about you.
Long and varied career, accent on the long. Started off in bank, commercial banking company of Sydney and in Perth, Western Australia. Then moved to Barclays in Slough, so not much of a downgrade there.
Transition there, yeah.
Worked only on the corporate side in Barclays pretty much after the first couple of years. Worked as an analyst in head office, so corporate analyst, worked analysing balance sheets, analysing business trends for the very largest bank customers. Then got into being a corporate manager, again, working solely with businesses. Really, my interest is in businesses and business, what makes a business tick, analysing business, analysing the accounts of businesses. Did a bit of training, teaching bank managers how to analyse balance sheets and break even, and even valuing properties at times, not valuing businesses, funny enough. We never tried to do that.
Right.
Left Barclays because I didn't like the way it was going and I want to do something different. And again, I've since then owned businesses, sold business. 10 years ago, I got into Everett Massam and Furby. I bought a franchise covering Herts, Beds, Bucks, Essex, which is how I met you. And I think it was introduced by Toby. And I've just sold it, literally the end of last year. And I'm now doing a little bit what you said earlier on. So I'm working, but at a lower intensity, with people who have business, a small number of clients who are looking to sell their businesses, either helping them value it, helping them grow it, helping them find the right broker, whatever comes across.
It's interesting because you've been through that what happens next journey more than once, I'd imagine, like sort of leaving the bank and then setting business up and more recently selling your business and going through it. What have you learned about navigating change as effectively as you have through the changes you've made when you've been thinking about what happens next?
Well, the main thing is to think about where you want the journey to go. Have some idea as to where you want the journey to go to start off with. So do you want to transfer the business to your children or to your co-workers? Do you want to sell it and completely cut away from it? How much do you want from the sale of the business? I think it's something that people don't ask, and I'm probably jumping ahead on some of the questions you've given me. But having a feel for what you want from it at a very early stage, because I've had people that have wanted to sell a business that have not given it a second thought until the minute I walk into their office to talk to them about the valuation, and they want X for it, and that's all they can think about. But to be honest, if it's worth Y, I can't bridge that gap by then. So thinking about it early is that number one.
Yeah, and tell me about. I mean, that really, we'll dig a bit deeper into the business valuation stuff. But what I'm curious about more in this part of the interview is after selling your most recent business, you've decided to carry on working. So what was the motivation for doing that? What was the idea of doing your own thing? Why not just stop? What were the elements and factors you were thinking about when thinking about what happens next for you?
Okay, well, my wife is still working. She works in the adjacent office, and I just don't want to stop. I mean, I do other things well, so I'm probably working 15, 20 hours a week as opposed to 40-ish.
Yeah.
I work at my own pace. I work for myself. I've never worked for someone else now. Work with other people, but never for someone else ever since Barclays. It also lets me leave my pension where it is, so I don't have to start drawing it. And every year I don't draw it, it goes up another. It went up 8%, 9% last year, so that would be nice, and that just gives me a little bit more security, basically.
I think that's interesting, isn't it? It's like finding the right balance is certainly a lot of what our clients are looking to do, and that balance isn't stopping. That balance might be less time, but I think the interesting point you make there is it hasn't got to be all or nothing, particularly when you're running your own thing. You choose actually how much time you commit based on what you want to achieve. Let's head back to the business side. Now, I've been doing some research recently because we interviewed somebody about preparing businesses for sale quite recently. And I realised the amount of businesses that actually get sold are really low. And those stats for people who are looking at selling their business are actually quite scary. So what are your thoughts around the statistics about selling the business, and what can we do about that as business owners?
Well, first of all, there's 5.5 million businesses in the country. 50,000 will be sold. I don't know, something like that. As far as I can see, I mean, at the moment there are about 15,000 businesses for sale on Dalton's. That's the biggest portal. They're all small businesses. The very big businesses aren't on there, but as always in these things, the small business is actually a relatively small numbers relative to the big businesses are small numbers relative to the small businesses that are on sale. So I doubt whether there's more than 20,000 businesses on the market at the moment, or who would sell, because not everybody advertises on the portals or through a broker. So it's a tiny percentage, and I've heard that of those 15,000 on Dalton's, only 20% will sell. That's not my experience. I think that's because there's a huge difference in quality between the various brokers who sell businesses. And
Right.
some of them only want to take businesses on. They want to charge a big upfront fee, which they'll negotiate on, but it's still an upfront fee. And their contingent fee at the end is not as important as taking someone on, in that they hope that they will beat the price down as they're going along themselves.
Yeah.
And they, I reckon, must sell very small numbers. The firm I work for, as Brick Masson and Furby, completely other end of the spectrum. We will not take on businesses that we don't think we can sell. I don't know what the EMF sales to take on stats are, and I probably wouldn't talk about them anyway. My personal stats is I've sold about 70% of the ones I've taken on. Initially, when I first joined, I probably took on 70%, so that was a lower figure. Latterly, I took on a much smaller number, qualified people a lot more strongly over the telephone before taking them on. So yeah, 70% roughly.
Yeah. So
But as a percentage, tiny.
The more intentional you are about thinking about selling the business, the better. What mistakes do you reckon business owners who are looking to sell make when they're thinking about selling their business?
What mistakes they make? They go to the wrong broker. Number one, I've just said that. They don't think about it early enough. They assume they know about it. They assume they know what the valuation is, or they think of a number and try to make the business worth that, whether or not it really is worth it.
Yeah, interesting. And let's assume, I suppose one factor that we're going to be talking about is time, right? So when we speak to business owners and they want to include their value in the business as part of their financial plan, one of the things that we always say is, well, how long is it going to take you to get the business to the value that you're expecting? And have you spoke to somebody to support you in terms of that being realistic? But clearly, timescales for both selling the business and preparing a business for sale are two different things. What do you recommend when business owners come to see you and say, preparing a business for sale, how long does it take? And then once they think they're at a point where their business has an asset that's saleable, how long does it actually take to sell?
Okay, two questions. How long before they sell it should they start thinking? As soon as possible. 5 years, 10 years is ideal. 5 years is probably the best number in order to maximize the sale value. 10 years is better, but let's say 5 years. Today there's never a better day than today.
It's like that old adage. I can't get my words out to say. That old saying that talks about the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is today, isn't it? The sooner you start it, the better it is.
Right, you could have summed up what I said a lot quicker. Yeah, exactly right. Today's a good time. Just start and understand what makes the business worth something, and then you can see what you can work on. I mean, we'll come to it later. When I value a business, and I can break it down into 7 areas, and I'll give you a score in each area. And if you can double that score, you can double your value, more or less.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll talk about the 7 factors and how you can potentially do that. So let's say somebody's been working on that for 5 years. They're then at a point where they're saying, well, I'm thinking about doing this in the short to medium term. How long does a business take to sell? And how long should you be thinking about staying around for? Because I'd imagine that there's certain arrangements that you make where the previous business owner needs to have a sort of contingency or handover period as well, right?
Yeah, well, that's right. So 6 months is not unreasonable for a handover period if the business is big enough and complicated enough. Some people don't have any at all, but you're perhaps talking about a shop or a cafe or whatever, and even then they'll have a couple of days. But let's say 6 months to sell. Do you know, 10 years ago I'd have said it took 6 months. Now I reckon it's 12 months.
Okay.
And particularly over the last 4 years, it's just well, it crept up 4 years ago and it stayed there.
Yeah, yeah. So 18 months potentially to both hand over and sell the business.
Yeah,
Is probably the right time scale. Now, you mentioned about the factors that improve the value of a business. Talk to me a little bit about what those factors are and how people can improve the odds of increasing the value of their business.
Increasing the value of the business. I mean, I was going to talk about the mistakes people make, and the number one is going to market with too high a price because they've decided that's the price, or because they get a broker in and the broker says, how much do you want for it? And they say £1 million. And he says, okay. And he puts it on the market at £1 million.
Yeah.
It's actually worth £500,000 or 750. He's never valued it. They've not valued it properly. And that business will never sell for it when you put it on at £1 million. If it's worth £500,000, if it's worth 800 and you put it on £1 million, yeah, okay, you've got wriggle room. But if it's worth £500,000 in reality, then how can you increase the value? Get a better broker. In the build-up, make sure your books are make sure you're completely on top of your books. A lot of books are a complete mess. People don't really look at the numbers themselves, don't understand the numbers themselves. Give them to the accountant. The accountant deals with the taxman, and there's no one in between. And if you can't answer pretty basic questions on your financials, then people pretty quickly got cold feet and go away. Either that, or you take an accountant or someone else to the meeting with you. Do you want to talk about the 7?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to talk about the 7 ways, but I think the other thing that I was going to mention was, how important do you think? Because I mean, there's accountants and there's accountants, and I've got no skin in the game in terms of this, but my own personal experience is that certain accountants are really good at just saying, here's my zero, here's my tax at the end of the year, here's your assessment, and thank you very much. But there's other accountants that tend to be a bit more proactive and strategic.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say that when you're thinking about selling your business, either you want to be on top of the numbers yourself, or you need an accountant who's not just doing the tax, but is probably a bit more strategic in that regard? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, 100%. And solicitor as well. And solicitors can kill deals. Slow solicitors can kill a deal. And a really active, proactive, listen to what you're saying, listen to what the other side is saying, be prepared to negotiate, be prepared to meet the other party, can get a deal over the line that otherwise wouldn't get over the line. So, but yes, accountants.
Yep. So accountants, or being top of your numbers and understanding what your numbers say is part one. I suppose the other thing that we're doing a lot of work with our business owner clients at the moment is, in partnership with lawyers, is making sure that all of their paperwork's in place. All of their shareholder contracts, shareholder agreements, all of that sort of due diligence stuff. How much does that play a part in value?
That probably wouldn't play a part in the original value, because it wouldn't come up till the due diligence. But your issue then is, if you can't get through the due diligence, if you don't understand what the due diligence is going to be, and if you can't get through it, then you might agree a deal at £1 million. Let's stick with £1 million. Sounds like a good number. That ends up at 800,000 or ends up at 700,000, because you're giving the other side a chance to come back. And what are they going to come back on? They're going to say, well, I'm going to renegotiate the price, because the deal isn't as clean as I thought it was going to be in the first place.
Yeah, so it's going to take more time, and that'll be reflected in the amount that we pay you. So help me understand. So we talked a little while ago about 7 factors. Talk me through those factors.
I call them the 7 pillars, just for the want of a better word, a better expression. The 7 pillars of business valuation. So I start off with financials. So everybody pretty much knows that you value a business as a multiple of profits. That is normally expressed as a multiple of EBITDA.
Yep.
I'll stop and just go back half a step. And there's 2 kinds of businesses that you sell. One that's a business that works on its own, and the other actually is a self-employed job. And that can be anybody from a shopkeeper, cafe owner, plumber. I had a solar plumbing business, actually just the guy with the van. But he had a lot of business. It was very, very profitable. Didn't sell it for anything like it would have gone had it been making that sort of money as an autonomous business. But it can sell, it does sell. But really, when I'm talking about the 7 pillars, I'm talking about $1 million plus turnover, maybe 2 million plus turnover, business that will work without the business owners. And that I'll come back to as one of the 7 pillars. So the financials are the start. And it isn't just the level of profits, but it's also the quality of profits, and how, whether it's an upward trend or whether it's a static trend or whether it's up and down like that. So that financials are number one. Bear in mind that people don't buy businesses for the past. They might value on the past, but only as a way of predicting the future, because they're only really interested in what the future's doing. Then growth potential, scalability, is another one of the 7 pillars. So people will be looking for the business to go forward. That doesn't mean that the owner can say, oh, it's got bags of potential, it can do this, it can do that, with no plan to do that, because they'll just discount that. But if it genuinely is on an upward trend and you can identify a plan for taking it to the next level, then growth potential is important. Profits are one thing, but cash flow is another. So the third is, how predictable is your cash flow? How positive or negative is your cash flow? It could be you've got recurring income, of course, but that's, I count that as part of cash flow as opposed to a separate pillar. So cash flow is important. How dependent is your business on your customers, your suppliers, your members of staff? Is the 4th pillar. Does your business have a strong value proposition, i.e. a USP? What sets you apart from all the competitors? Do you have anything that sets you apart? Do you have any patents, whatever you like to call them? That's number 5. Customer satisfaction, tricky to measure, and it always comes out as a positive number. But basically, I'm asking how many complaints you've had, what's happened to complaints, look at your Google reviews, whatever else. So customer satisfaction. And then finally, management team. Do you have a team in place? Or when I start talking about who is the CEO, who is the marketing director, who is the sales director, who's the operations director, is it always the business owners who sit in front of me? And
because if it's one person, that adds risk, right?
My question is, what happens to your business if you go on holiday for 3 months? Can it come back? Is it still there? Is it better? Is it so, that's management team. That's my 7 pillars. And I score each of those. I ask lots of questions, score each of those, come to an overall score, but particularly then we can look at the individual ones. And the ones that are well below average quite often you can work on them. Every one of those I could say that you could work on. You might not be able to, growth potential, you might just be in a dead market. Well, that's going to be a problem. Probably means you should sell it quicker than later.
But the elements that are within our control are recruiting to, as long as there's the right cash flow, to build a business that's a bit more autonomous, and looking at what we can do to make it better. What's the element that you find that people neglect the most? So out of those 7, what's the one where people go, oh, you know what, I haven't thought of that before?
What's the one they haven't thought about? It's probably the fact, well, they probably have thought about it, but it's probably the fact that they are the business and the business is totally and utterly dependent upon them. The thing I come across more than others, and for some quite big companies, not just for one-man band, obviously, but or even where you've got 2 or 3 employees, but some quite big companies, and until you start asking them questions and who made that decision and how did you get to that decision, they don't perhaps realise. So get a team in place, but also have some sort of operating manual so that you lay down exactly what you do.
It's interesting. We're going through a process within Savello at the minute where we're videoing all of our processes to train the next set of recruits that we're bringing on board, just to systemize and automate a lot of the back office stuff. But I had a really interesting, on that note, I had a really interesting conversation the other day with a business owner. And we're thinking about the plan in terms of what happens next for him. And he's built really decent business, built wealth independently, but now he's looking at what's next. And I said, well, what? You've built the business and you could have been independent before, but you're still working really hard. And cool with that, that's fine. But clearly that's going to impact what your plan's going to be. And his point to me was a really interesting one. He said to me, I know I should have made myself redundant. I know that that should be the plan with the business. But number one, I was loving what I was doing. And, and number two, it forms part of my identity. And it's interesting, isn't it, that sometimes we know what to do, but because we're so caught up in who we are as a business owner and the value we add to the world, that transition might take a bit longer than we expect and might be a bit difficult. But I agree with you. Having a clear plan to get there is probably a really good aspiration.
He's made a decision. It's a positive decision. He enjoyed doing it. I mean, I've met lots of people who hate going in every day and they can't get
Yeah,
rid of the business.
yeah, yeah. And that's the key, isn't it? That intentionality, and if it brings in purpose, actually that's not a bad thing. One of the things that I'm really interested in, that one of the things that we're exploring quite a lot in what happens next, is zooming out from financial well-being and looking at overall well-being. Now, every time we get together, Mike, we have a bit of a run chat because we're
Yeah.
both runners. I'm not at the minute. I'm training for the 100-mile Ride London, so I've turned into one of those really annoying cyclists that talk about RPM and stuff like that all the time. But I think one of the things that we're realizing is the importance of physical well-being as part of whatever happens next. What insights have you got for that for you, and how and where does running play a part in that for your own well-being?
Well, I've two parents who both ended up. Well, my mother is still around; she's 95, but she's bedbound. My father was when he went. My father also very kindly gave me this gene that makes me suffer from bad back. That I think I've done it for years. My brother's much worse. I've got passed it on to two sons and potentially two grandchildren. And I'm one of 2.5 million people in the country with a bad back. So the doctors don't ever take it very seriously. As far as I can tell, my own particular bad back relates to chronic inflammation. And then when you start going down the chronic inflammation rabbit hole, you realize that your diet plays a massive, massive, massive part. Keeping your weight at a decent level plays a massive, massive part. I've always been active, always played sport, never been a runner until the year before lockdown when I started. I did a C to 5K
Yeah,
and I then started park running. I'm coming up for my 100th park run next month. So again, they've been slightly hit and miss. Obviously couldn't do one in 2021, I think, when park runs ceased for months and months. But I am trying my best to look at what I eat and be careful about what I eat. So I don't eat ultra processed food, full stop. Try to eat hardly any processed food, and we cook every meal that we
fresh,
cook. I follow several people. Dr. Tim Spector is one.
brilliant,
Brilliant man. I
really
love what he
good.
says.
Yeah,
35 different vegetables a week. It can be frozen. So if you look at our freezer, it's got more frozen veg in than anything else that we chuck in now. So we make a curry, we chuck a bit of cabbage in it, we chuck
yeah,
some spinach in it, and we chuck whatever else in it. So we're kind of quite good like that. Sugar is the arch nemesis. And I've got it's a sweet tooth, but I can't resist a
yeah. But
chocolate brownie
if you're doing a lot of the right things, I think having a bit of what we enjoy. For me, I mean, it is sweet food, but it's also cheese is my big one. And in actual fact, I wrote a blog for the Savello website all about the gifts that you should buy the cheese lover in your life, because I know a lot of my clients love cheese as well.
Cheese is okay. What's wrong with cheese? Don't tell me cheese is bad.
Well, it depends on how much you eat. And
Oh, right, okay.
but interestingly, what I loved about Tim Spector's work is the element of conversation that he has around gut health and fermented foods. So a new addition for me over the last 6 months has been kimchi. So I've added kimchi into my diet, which is really good because it promotes positive gut health. But yeah, no, that's really interesting.
Sauerkraut as well.
Yeah,
Dr. Barry Sears, have you come across him? He's another one.
no,
Got the zone diet. I'm not really sure about it, but he's saying 40% carbs, 30% protein, 30% fat. I don't eat enough protein yet, and that's a tricky one to get the right level, because it's important for your muscle, and because you lose muscle when you get to my age. So
we had an expert in physical well-being on, and he was talking about actually the importance of weight training later in life. And certainly runners don't do particularly a lot of the weight stuff, and it's like anything, it's
I'm hopeless. I've converted my son's old bedroom to a gym, which is 2 doors down from me, but I'm getting in there is so difficult.
Go
around 8K, go around 12K. I'll do it.
No, 100% with you on that. Now, one interesting, when I was doing the research for this interview, what highlighted, and I think I read this on LinkedIn, you highlighted the fact that some businesses in the same sector are average, and some, even if they're in the same sector, and next door or in a neighbouring town or street, can be hugely successful. What's the difference? What insights have you got about the difference between the two? Same sector, might be very close to each other. What's the difference between a fairly standard and hugely successful business?
Oh, you asked me that question. You didn't ask me quite the same way. That's a really, really, really good question. It's a difficult one. So I'm thinking as I'm going along. The way it's set up to start off with, does one happen around people? Has he got the right team in? Is it just dependent upon one person, or is there a team of people? Is your product, how is your product differentiated? Are you just competing on price because you've got no other choice, or have you actually got a well thought out, well branded, well sold product that people perceive as being better, even if it really isn't? You've got to convince people by branding it and selling it.
Perceived value is super important, isn't it? It's just that element of interesting. So that's really good. And I suppose the other element that's worth considering is that that element of, but it's something you said that was really interesting, because when I think about my own business journey building Savello over the past few years, I've made every mistake in the book. So I'm definitely not one of those business owners who got it right at the start, but there's always an opportunity to improve from where you are today, right? Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. Making mistakes is absolutely fine, provided you don't keep making them, and providing you learn from your mistake. I've made all my mistakes in life and in business, 100%. And
it's an opportunity to learn, isn't it?
I don't take it personally. Probably I might do. Try not to take it personally, shall we say?
Yeah, I had a really interesting experience earlier in the week, funny enough, Mike. That so we look after a decent number of employer clients as well. The majority of our clients are private, but we've got a sort of decent number of employer clients. And I said to the guys here, what I want to do once a year, I want to make sure that we do a webinar on us, no extra fee for our employer clients, where all of the employees get invited and we can answer their personal finance questions. So we call it Your Money Questions Answered. And it's interesting where our own private clients tend to be 50 plus, built wealth, thinking about what's next. When we're working with our employer clients, their staff can be anything from 18 to 70, and like all sorts of different challenges and issues going on in their life. So, we got some feedback from what they wanted to talk about. We built the presentation, and we had 150 booked in, 90 attended on the day. And we had an interactive bit where people could ask me questions as they went along and all of that sort of stuff. I did a thing at the end where I asked for live feedback. So I asked for a rating where I saw the numbers like 1 to 10, where the numbers tick up on the screen. And thankfully it went well. So I got 8s, 9s, 10s, 7s. And then I got like, out of the amount of people on there, I got 2 5s. That was like, I've clearly not hit the mark with those people. It's just not worked for them at all. But and my immediate emotional reaction was, oh no, what have I done? But as you say, I think looking back with a bit of hindsight, reframing that as an opportunity to learn, and we were actually going to ask feedback from those people about what we can improve next time, then just lets us get incrementally better. So as you say, in business and in life, not letting the ego get in the way and like sort of asking those questions so you can improve is not always the easiest thing to do, but certainly something that I believe is important. Last question, apart from finding out where people can find you, I want to talk a little bit about not only the business, but the mistakes that you think people make through your experience of working with business owners throughout the years when thinking about what's next. What mistakes do they make when they're selling their business and moving on to whatever's next in their lives? And what do you think they can do to plan better?
I just think having a plan to start off with. Where do you want to be? What do you see yourself doing? I mean, the one biggest mistake I think is having a business where you're working 70, 80 hours a week and selling it, and then having no plan and just going home and looking at the telly or blowing it all on a big holiday or whatever you're going to do, but not having a plan to start off with. There's a big transition going from being very active in a business to doing nothing. So that I think it's a, I don't often meet people after I've sold their businesses. I do sometimes, and people have come up to me and said it's the best thing that ever happened to them. But they have generally been. But well, the one thing to say is that they are the people that sold the businesses. Of course, what I don't meet is the people that didn't sell the businesses, fortunately, and they will have not thought the whole thing through. They will have maybe held out for a figure that they could never achieve and end up liquidating the company. And then, they've got a bigger problem. But at least if they sold the business and I've given them that chunk of money in the bank, which may or may not form part of their what they're going to live on for the rest of their lives.
Then, but I agree with you. The planning element, even though the plan doesn't always go to plan, just taking the time to think about what's next and doing that as early as possible is fundamental, isn't it?
If you do a plan, then you do what ifs as well, don't you? So
I mean,
it takes 2 years.
Yeah, a 1,000,000%. I mean, the certainly when we're building people's financial plans, focusing on the best, looking at the contingencies, and doing that is really important. But I also think that applies to all areas of our life. What if I volunteer at the charity as a trustee 2 days a week, and how does that fit? So, what if I think is really important. Mike, tell me a little bit about where people can find you online. So if they really like what you're saying, they can get in touch and see if you can help them.
LinkedIn is probably best these days. So I'm under Mike Ainsworth and LinkedIn. You can easily find me. Got my photo there. Everett, Masson and Furby I worked for, or also known as the M&F, but I no longer figure as I've sold that bit, although I still work with him. But so LinkedIn is going to be best for me.
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure we share the link to your LinkedIn profile on there as well. Thank you for your time today. It's been really appreciated. Have a lovely remainder of the day.
Thank you, Chris. It's been a pleasure.